Caesar told us about Druids in the previous story, and now is going to tell us about knights and wicker men of immense size. Don't forget to subscribe not to miss more content about Caesar Conquers. The other class is that of the knights. When there is a need and any war arises, which generally used to happen every year before Caesar's arrival, either because they themselves were inflicting injuries or repelling those inflicted upon them, all of them engage in warfare, and as each one is most distinguished by birth and resources, they have the most vassals and clients around them. They recognize this as their only influence and power. The entire nation of the Gauls is greatly devoted to religious beliefs, and for that reason, those who are affected by more serious illnesses and those who are involved in battles and dangers either sacrificed human beings as victims or vow that they will sacrifice them, and they use the Druids to perform these sacrifices, because they believe that unless a man's life is given for a man's life, the will of the immortal gods cannot be appeased. They also have sacrifices of the same kind established publicly. Others have wicker men of immense size, the limbs of which, woven from wicker, they fill with living men. After these are set on fire, the men are surrounded by the flames and perish. They believe that the punishment of those caught in theft, robbery, or some other offense is more pleasing to the immortal gods. But when the supply of that kind of victim is lacking, they even descend to the punishment of the innocent. They especially worship the god Mercury. There are many images of him. They regard him as the inventor of all arts, the guide of journeys and marches, and believe he has the greatest power over gains and commercial transactions. Next to him, they worship Apollo, Mars, Jupiter, and Minerva. About these gods, they hold almost the same opinion as other nations. They believe that Apollo drives away diseases, Minerva teaches the principles of works and crafts, Jupiter rules the heavens, and Mars controls wars. When they have decided to engage in battle, they usually vow to dedicate the spoils of war to him. After they have conquered, they sacrifice the captured animals and collect the remaining goods in one place. In many cities, you can see piles of these items in consecrated places, and it rarely happens that anyone, disregarding the religious obligation, dares to take any of the captured goods or to hide any of them at home. And the most severe punishment with torture has been established for this crime. The Gauls declare that they are all descended from the god Dis and say this had been handed down by the Druids. For this reason, they count the periods of all time not by the number of days, but by the number of nights. They observe birthdays and the beginnings of months and years in such a way that the day follows the night. In the rest of their customs of life, they differ mainly from the rest of mankind in this, that they do not allow their children to approach them openly until they have grown up to the extent that they can bear the duty of military service, and they consider it shameful for a son of childish age to stand in public in the sight of his father. The men, as much money as they have received from their wives as a dowry, they match with an equal amount from their own goods after a valuation has been made. A joint account is kept of this whole sum, and the profits are saved. Whichever of them survives, the portion of both, along with the profits from previous times, comes to that one. Men have the power of life and death over their wives as well as over their children. And when a man of high rank dies, his relatives gather, and, if the circumstances of his death raise any suspicion, they hold an inquiry into the wives in the manner of slaves, and if found guilty, they execute them after subjecting them to torture and all kinds of torments. Their funerals, according to the custom of the Gauls, are magnificent and costly. They throw into the fire all things that they think were dear to the deceased while alive, including animals. And just a little before our time, slaves and clients who were known to have been loved by their masters were burned together with them in a duly completed funeral. Those states which are considered to manage their public affairs more advantageously have it decreed by law that if anyone hears any rumor or report concerning the state from their neighbors, they are to convey it to a magistrate and not communicate it to anyone else, because it is known that reckless and inexperienced men are often frightened by false rumors and driven to some wrongdoing, and often take drastic decisions about the most important matters. The magistrates conceal what they deem necessary and disclose to the public what they think is beneficial. It is not allowed to speak about public affairs except in a council. The Germans differ greatly from this custom, for they have neither Druids to preside over religious matters, nor do they care much for sacrifices. They consider as gods only those whom they can see, and whose help they evidently receive, namely the sun, Vulcan, and the moon, and they have not even heard of the others. Their whole life is spent in hunting and in military pursuits. From their earliest youth, they are trained in labor and hardship. Those who have remained chaste for the longest time receive the greatest praise among their people. They think that this practice increases stature, strengthens muscles, and fortifies the body. It is considered most disgraceful for a young man to have relations with a woman before the age of 20. And of this, there is no secrecy, for they bathe together in the rivers and use only skins or small coverings of reindeer hides, leaving a great part of their body naked. They do not focus on agriculture, and most of their diet consists of milk, cheese, and meat. No one has specific land or personal boundaries. Instead, the magistrates and leaders assign land annually to tribes and groups of people who have gathered together, granting as much and in whatever location they deem appropriate, and they force them to move the following year. They offer many reasons for this practice, so that people, captivated by continuous familiarity, do not exchange their enthusiasm for waging war for agriculture, so that they do not strive to acquire extensive estates and expel the less powerful from their possessions, so that they do not build more carefully to avoid cold and heat, so that no greed for money arises, which could lead to factions and disputes, so that they can keep the common people in good spirits, since everyone sees that their own wealth is equal to that of the most powerful. It is a great honor for their communities to have vast uninhabited areas around them after expelling their neighbors. They consider it a mark of valor to have their neighbors driven out of their lands, and to ensure that no one dares to settle nearby. At the same time, they believe they will be safer because the fear of sudden incursions is removed. When a state is defending itself or launching an attack, magistrates are elected with the power of life and death to lead the war. In peacetime, there is no common magistrate, but the leaders of the regions and districts administer justice and settle disputes among their people. They do not consider it disgraceful to commit robbery beyond the borders of their own state, and they claim it is done to train their young men and reduce idleness. When a leader declares in a council that he will lead, and those who approve of the cause and the man promise their support, they stand up and are praised by the assembly. Those who do not follow are considered deserters and traitors, and they lose all credibility in future matters. They consider it unlawful to violate a guest. Those who come to them for any reason are protected from harm and treated as sacred, with open houses and shared provisions. Now we know more about Gauls and Germans, but there is more. Subscribe to the channel to get more insights into Caesar's conquers. See you in the next video.